Before we get into everything that's ensued since, obviously the World Cup, the whole circus of things that have happened, let's just take a minute to talk about how trash the PCB is before we lay in again into bichara the players who are still giving their effort. We have a board who actually does. It seems like they don't want us to win, so let's start with that.
It's a, it's a shameful PCB administration right now, led by Zaka Ashraf. I felt, Rahman, that there was a period of a few years when we had Wasim Khan in the PCB that things were trending in the right direction. Felt like we were employing the right people across the board, whether it be coaching staff, selection committees. PSL was continuing to grow and make strides, and Pakistan cricket was actually doing really good work. Like we were getting teams after an era of playing abroad back to Pakistan. All test sides, barring India, I believe, have come here in some capacity or the other to play cricket in Pakistan, which was a huge deal for us. And not just that, like we struck really good broadcast deals. The PCB as a whole was doing well as an administration, and that's something that isn't really called out enough. That there are some good people in the PCB. It just sometimes they're given a bad name by the head of the organization. My point essentially is this: that I felt Pakistan was trending in the right direction from an administrative point of view, but all that has changed in the last few months with Zaka Ashraf, and since he's taken back control. Now let's make no mistakes; like these are all political appointments that have been made since his administration has come in. There's been a lot of people hired who are essentially they
यार
have nothing
एटलीस्ट
to
उन
do with
लोगों को
cricket.
हायर कर दो
They
जिनको मतलब क्रिकेट से कुछ ना कुछ है ना लाइक यू हायर द सेम गाय हु वाज देयर 10 years ago तब भी कुछ नहीं किया आई एम सॉरी टू से अब भी इतना कोई he's actually been a negative so far at least hire people who have something to do with sports administration at the very least bro ye aake pata nahi like we criticize the players all you want but when your whole organization is trying to save face saying they backed the team but they had nothing to do with it completely हाथ उठा रहे हैं उस प्रोडक्ट से उसके बाद you have a journalist and one of the PCB officials, in cahoots together to save their own backs, leaking a text message that Babar Azam had. Then we're going to criticize Babar Azam for captaincy and batting. This guy doesn't even know have the backing of his own board. His messages are getting leaked on live TV somewhere. One of Pakistan's biggest channels that streams all around the world. Like, come on, how can we expect them to win a World Cup under those
this is
circumstances, man?
This is going on during the World Cup when the team is in India. Obviously, they're not doing too well. Statement comes out saying that, okay, like Pakistan fans who are already behind the team, so you don't really have to release any statements of the sort. Anyways, the statement goes on to say you need to back the Pakistan team and stay behind them. And at the end, a little disclaimer: oh, the team was picked by Babar Azam and the chief selector, and we had nothing to do with it. Like, aise nahi
He
chalta,
needs
bro.
them
Like,
back.
this is like disgraceful behavior. The fact that these people are in these sort of positions like disgusts me, to be very honest, and I'm very concerned because all that progress that I mentioned at the start is being lost. The domestic system has gone back, and they've changed it as they always do, and it's again it's a shit show right now from top to bottom, culminating in a lot of decisions which these guys should not have been making in the first place because this is supposed to be an interim
Yeah.
PCB administration. They actually were not supposed to make decisions that impacted the long term of Pakistan cricket, but they have done. Like from top to bottom, they've ripped everything up.
Which they have no right
Now,
to
that's
do.
not to
They
say
have no
that
right
any
to
of the
do
players.
it, any of it. And these guys have basically taken a sport and they've turned into a battleground for
A
political
farce.
ego,
It's a
right? Like
farce.
that's all it is. Anybody who comes in is no more than a puppet of whatever party they serve, and they have no regard for any of the good policies that were put in place by anyone who comes from a different political affiliation. And that's been the problem in short. Then you get people who know उनको क्रिकेट का ABC नहीं पता है and they're coming in and they're jacking up the whole system. So before we even blame the players, if you're not getting back from home, like that was one of Pakistan has had a lot of like terrible things happen within the PCB, but this is arguably amongst like top two or three most shameful, especially the press release, man. I don't know what the hell that was. I really don't know what that was. I don't know what they thought they were doing.
You mentioned, undoing the policies of the previous administration. It's not like there's any, handover between the previous administration for them to actually like explain, okay, this is what we're working on. It's just one day a guy is removed from office. Everything that he had. I think the same thing happened to Ramiz Raja. One day he was PCB chairman, the next day he's out. He doesn't have the opportunity to go back and get his belongings and things like
Yeah.
that. ये भी चलता है यहाँ हमारे मुल्क में. And secondly, they're not even looking okay, whether those policies that those guys put in place, are they working, are they not? There's no analysis. It's just okay, whatever he did, even if it's good, we didn't do it, so like let's change something so that we can take credit for whatever occurs. And that's the ultimate cause. It's like wanting to take credit, it's wanting to further your own ambitions with a blatant disregard for the sport. This is the one sport that runs decently in our country just because everyone cares so much about it and there's a huge industry that's running on it. Our other sports are in tatters, from like hockey, where we were world champions, to squash, to football. This is the one sport that's actually running decently, and now they're trying to ruin this as well. And so that really like, gets at me. Like it's very hard for me to talk about this without getting emotional or angry, because to be honest, like I don't really see how we as a country can improve our own cricketing structure if this continues to happen. And ultimately, I don't really see any way for it to change, right? Because it's just the way that the system is set up, and these people are just in there for their own ulterior motives, essentially. With
And this is why we
like,
have
yeah,
so much love for the guys who are actually putting on the kit, because everything they do is in spite of this bullshit. Honestly, like they're the system in place is working against them large majority of the time. Yet whatever they produce, they do it through their own, whatever you may call it. But they get stuff done, and we always appreciate them for that. But how can you even expect something from anybody when this is what's going on in the background? We're gonna get into the captaincy and stuff as well. Um, Quick point on Babar Azam, a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but man, like this was the first time almost ever that the players were so strong enough to have a de facto players union and be strong enough because they had a personality with the type of charisma as Babar, such as what Babar Azam has, and they were actually able to go in and negotiate deals for themselves and better contracts, better wages. They were finally going to be able to get a percentage, still probably not what they deserved, but a percentage of the ICC earnings of what comes in to the country, right? Sorry, advertisement.
advertisement
Yeah,
earnings,
yeah, all of
any
that stuff,
revenue,
broadcasting
broadcast
rights, all
revenue.
of these things that are associated with the whole system. So say whatever you want about Babar Azam, the tactician, but as a leader of men, as somebody who could bind everybody together, this was a threat for such a corrupt organization. So they were waiting for something to go wrong within the team performance wise. I'm sure of it. For them to have Babar
Yeah.
Azam there to be sacked, it works ultimately in their benefit um, in that regard. So I'm not surprised. You see all of these media campaigns and stuff run against Babar Azam. A lot of the media, I'm guessing, is bought as well. Cricketing aside, I'm saying that a lot of people benefit from him no longer being captain.
When you say bot, it just means that they're getting information from certain sources, and those sources are the ones that they want to be in power, right? Everyone has their own agenda. The agenda, unfortunately, is not the betterment of Pakistan cricket across the board. That's not to say that there's not like fantastic journalists and good people working within sports media in Pakistan. Within the PCB itself, there's like a lot of good people doing good work, but वो लोग चले जाएंगे bro अगर ऐसा चलता रहा.
100%.
Like उनका
Bro, we
क्या
talk
लेना
about
देना है ऐसे
Mickey
environment
Arthur,
में रहने
Shan.
का.
I hate what he did. I hate that he is taking, like Pakistan cricket team. We're a world champion at the end of the day. You coaching us half and half pisses me off to my very core. But if you're outside and you're looking at the political environment inside and knowing कि जैसे कोई इनका PM बदले मुझे भी उड़ा देंगे, why would you do anything aside from,
Exactly, and
keeping
that's
yourself
why
secure?
I don't blame him for keeping his Derbyshire job. Obviously, like as a coach during the World Cup, his performance as well needs to come under the microscope. Like it wasn't good enough. But from a personal perspective, I completely understand why he's keeping his Derbyshire job and he's not committing fully to Pakistan, because he knows the second the chairman changes, we're out, and that's essentially what happened here, right? Najim Sethi hired him, and now Zaka Ashraf is in, and they want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So ये सब
Yeah.
like किसी
Bro,
के
there's
फायदे
not a
में
lot of
नहीं
things
है
that are
at
black
the
and
end of the
white,
day.
but when one of your top executives are meeting up with a journalist and leaking the captain's text messages on in front of the whole world, you can't tell me that system wants the team or the captain to succeed. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think obviously we can go on and on talking about this, but let's just come to Babar
Mhm.
Azam's captaincy because you touched on it. Obviously, he is no longer Pakistan captain in all three formats. The speculation is, and I think it's pretty much confirmed for most people, that he was asked to step down from limited overs. But he said, you know what, I'm not having it. I'll resign from Test as well.
I
And
think
good
we
on
both
him.
wanted him out of
You know,
captaincy for various, like for a myriad of reasons. A lot of it for his own benefit. Honestly, we wanted that scrutiny taken off of him. But and then just getting into his captaincy itself, a lot of it I would still say has to do with how poorly the team performed. Because I don't know if there's one specific match you could point to in the World Cup and say we lost because of his kaptani. But you and I were both of the belief that he left a lot on the table in terms of moving the game forward and thinking out of the box and trying different things.
yeah, if you look at Babar's captaincy as a whole, objectively, like there's been, particularly in T20s, there's been good times. In T20, it's a lot easier to captain a side just because like there's very clear matchup, there's very clear dynamics that happen in the game that it's easier to control. While in one day, you have to be a lot more on your feet and thinking, as well as in test matches, and maybe that's why T20 suited Babar to some extent, and why he was able to have really good results. But regardless of what the case is, like he did lead Pakistan to a T20 World Cup final and a semi-final, and obviously, like you get unfortunate in some of those occasions, and you don't get over the line. I don't think necessarily in either of those tournaments did we lose because of his captaincy. So this is the first time that it actually really came to the fore in a world event. You touched on it at the start. I think the biggest positive about Babar Azam's captaincy was that he was a really good leader. Obviously, when you're captain of a cricket team, there's two aspects to it. There's on field in terms of like how you are as a tactician, but there's also whether you're able to unite the dressing room and you're able to be a good man manager. And I think for that perspective, he was able to generate a good group of guys and give them consistent opportunities, which hasn't really happened always in the past in Pakistan. And I think we need to commend him for that
Absolutely.
because there's not going to be a lot of people talking positives about his captaincy
I
at
have
the
a few
moment.
things to say positively
Having
as well,
said,
just to add on, man. My biggest doubts when he got made captain were two things. One, did he have the personality to inspire those around him? Checked. Checked. For sure. He did that. Number
delivered
two,
100%.
would he be a strong captain in terms of थोड़ी बहुत मतलब तुम्हें अपनी मनमानी भी करनी चाहिए as a captain. He was not a weak character. He asserted the dominance that we haven't seen a lot of captains assert, especially because he was that.
He used his
Yes,
star power
to good
to
effect.
good effect, and like he recognized that I'm Babar Azam. I have a level of prestige
Yeah,
or star power within the game in Pakistan that I can use that power for positive reasons. And like you mentioned, whether that be contracts and things like that, and making sure his players got the protection they needed in that aspect, whether it be
selection.
selection, making sure like he
Yeah,
got the team he wanted, he definitely, yeah,
and
he
then
definitely
just
stepped
a
up
few other
in
things as
those.
well led us to number one in ODI for maybe the first time ever. Um, could have very easily had two T20 World Cup wins under him. He could have very easily had two under his belt. Imran Khan, let me think of who else: Wasim Akram, Waqar Yunus, Misbah ul Haq, Shahid Afridi, Mohammad Hafeez, Shoaib Malik. These guys have all captained Pakistan against India in a World Cup. None of them have won except this guy. None of them have won except this guy. That's one. It's one game in isolation, but it was such a massive like monkey that got taken off our backs, and him being at the forefront of it and hitting the winning runs in what was such a dominant display and really I think augured a lot of belief back within the Pakistani setup of us being able to do something that we never thought was possible before. I think that's a massive accomplishment in itself that people shouldn't forget. And just I think the yeah, go ahead.
And I think just building on that, everything we said about Barber, I think that should like let everyone know that we really wanted him to succeed because I think out of everyone within this current lot, like he was the right guy to be leader. Maybe not from like having everything that you need of a tactician and things like that, but he was the best player, right? He's accepted widely. And when you have that sort of guy who's able to unite the dressing room, but also like everyone has so much respect for that, it's like no doubt that this guy is ki jaga team mein banti hai or
तीनों
whatnot.
format में.
I think like ideally for all of us, like we would have wanted Babar to succeed as captain. It didn't happen for a number of reasons. So let's get into to some of those.
Man, some people just don't have it, right? And that's something we're gonna have to live with. Like, not everybody can have
Yeah.
everything. Some of the best players ever haven't been the best captains. Some of the best captains ever haven't been the best players. It doesn't mean he's a bad captain. लेकिन एक वो जो अलग spark नजर
Yeah.
आती है ना, in terms of intuition and out of the box thinking, and having like the balls to do something that nobody would have expected. Maybe he didn't have that,
Mhm.
right? Like he maybe he just isn't in that same
There is a degree of
yeah.
conservatism, right? Like it stems from the like if you look at T20s, like there's always been that okay, Babar and Rizwan are delivering always in T20s, but there is always the nagging doubt in your mind, okay, maybe like we could go to the next level by being a little bit more aggressive. That doesn't necessarily mean that either of them have to move from the opening slot. It just means that you can be a little bit more progressive in the way you bat. And I felt like that sort of attitude never really came into the team. Like we have this whole Pakistan way playing more progressive in Test. Yes, it finally started to come through in that format, but it didn't necessarily come through in other formats. And I think that's an inherent mentality that you sometimes have as a player, and Babar doesn't really have that. Like if you look at the interview with Fakhr Zaman, like he has that thing, yeah, Fakhr's hitting sixes, but Fakhr is saying that Babar's coming to him and being like,
अब
okay,
रुक
like
जा
ek lag
रुक
gaya hai,
जा
so like he has that streak in him, right? And that's probably like it's like because Babar is so talented and the player that he is, like he can afford sometimes to play like that. But just because he's playing like that doesn't mean that that necessarily should be the tactic of the team as a whole. And I don't know if I'm doing justice to that point right
I
there,
see what
but sometimes you need to be able to build a team that has the ability to really be in your face and attack the opposition in ways that maybe he wasn't really able to do beyond like relying on empowering good players. And that is a big part of it, right? Like he found a good team, he took them to the next level, he put them in positions where they could
yeah.
succeed. But maybe as a whole, to be able to get over the line in those big games, like we spoke a little bit about Pat Cummins, you need that little bit of an X factor because when the game is close, right? It's more when Pakistan's cruising, it's not an issue. When everyone's playing well, anyone can be
Yeah,
captain. When the games are tight, when like you're defending a low total, when you don't have the bowling resources that are the best in the world or ones that you feel can completely win a match on their own, that's when like the captain becomes a little bit
absolutely.
more
Keep talking,
important.
bro. So, Shan, the new captains have been announced. But before we, I mean, not revealing, everybody knows who the hell they are. But who was your pick? And we'll go over my pick as well. Who are your picks for the different formats?
Dude, I know this is a question you asked me before as well, and I don't have an answer because I think naturally, like you had your vice captains in both formats. You had Shadab and you had Rizwan. Shadab absolutely has killed any chance that he had of even being in this conversation with his performance. So I just put that to the side. In tests, I think like Rizwan was the obvious option because he was vice captain. I think overall as well, he he's done enough. He's proved it at domestic level as well. Proved it in the PSL with Multan Sultan. So has a good head on his shoulders. In that sense, he was natural. But there's something like in my head always being like, okay, maybe he's a little bit similar to Babar in limited overs with that same sort of inherent conservatism. With the PSL, I don't know how much, like obviously Multan and Islamabad play a progressive brand of cricket. I don't know how much that comes from the captain versus like the coaching setup and the influences from the rest of the dressing room. So I don't know how much we can take that. I think Shaheen, for example, is one where you can see the impact that a player as individually as captain has on a team. Like that team was in like that team was nowhere, and he picked it up and went back to back. So my long-winded point is that I there was no natural obvious candidate in any of the formats that jumped out to me that I would say, okay, I wanted this guy to be captain. So I was very curious to see what they decided because there's pros and cons to everyone. And it's similar to when Babar got made captain, right? Like I think वो हमारा logo देख लो कौन है उस logo पे हम Karachi boys हैं Steffi bhai was our king and when he got removed as captain, I think we all recognized कि उस time पे his performances maybe didn't merit a place in the team, but as captain, he was a great captain. I don't necessarily see someone, and to be fair, when Sefi got made captain as well, you can go back and continue to take this back and back. But there's a lot of these guys, often when they're made captain, there's no obvious candidate as such, right? Like after 2010 spot fixing scandal, Misbah got pulled out of nowhere. He wasn't even in the team and made captain, and that ended up being like
Master
a
stroke.
master stroke. So sometimes you come to
By
these
mistake,
decisions
yeah,
in
true.
odd ways, and by mistake, there isn't always a natural candidate. I feel like all these guys, like I said, have um, aspects to their personality that can help them succeed. But yeah, for me, there isn't one guy who stood out. What
There
about
were
you?
two guys, so I'll tell you my second choice first. I would have been okay if he was made like a limited or T20 captain or something. But obviously, I've never seen any team employ two separate captains who play all three formats. So then my natural inclination was just to go for one captain. And for me, it was in my head, and I've been saying this not just from this World Cup, I've been saying this for the better part of 2 years. I think the best captain in Pakistan is actually Mohammad Rizwan. And I would even go as far as to say that if he had his break, if he broke out as a player a year and a half earlier, that he probably would have been my choice from then, or would have been a choice from then. I love what he does with Multan Sultans. I think he has that. I think maybe we differ a little bit in opinion here. Whereas you might think that him and Bob are very similar in conservatism, I think Rizwan is a little bit more willing to think out of the box. I tend to. It's hard. You're right. It's hard to judge captains by T20s. I like to judge captains by the resources readily available to them. And I think in T20 cricket, you always look at Multan Sultans, and they never have a bowling attack that on paper blows you out of the water, but he always makes them, I think, at least perform above their level, which is something that I
And it's
young
usually young
players, yeah,
bowlers, right? So which is even more
yeah,
testament to a
yeah.
captain being able to throw those guys under
Everybody
pressure
knows who
situations.
Hasanullah
Yeah.
and Dahani are now. No one knew who they were before, right? Abbas Afridi, another, story of a guy having a better life in cricket after he leaves the Karachi Kings. He comes to Multan and he like is the number one bowler in the PSL. Hasanullah wins player of the tournament. Fucking Khushdil Shah was among the top leading wicket takers one year, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so just
That was
just for that
fantastic.
type of
Yeah.
stuff, and then that natural charisma he has of performing or not, people gravitate towards Rizwan. With Babar, I think a lot of it is with performance. Rizwan, I think people just gravitate towards him. He has that Sarfraz Ahmad type thing. But like you said, I think Shaheen for me was an alternative because he moves the game forward as well. So pretty consistently, we were taking these two names, right? Um, Lo and
Yeah.
behold, the T20 captain is Shaheen Afridi. Um,
And let's
let's
should we
talk a little
talk a
bit.
little
Let's
bit
talk a little
about
bit about him.
Shaheen
Let's talk about him.
before we
Did
get
you like
into
it or
it?
not when you heard
Because
it?
I think
I think neither of us wanted him to be the Test captain because of what it meant for his workload. Which spoiler
yeah,
alert didn't
I think
happen.
like dude, there's an aspect of me that really
Yeah,
likes it. Like, cause he's a guy you want to get behind, right? And he has that swagger. Like you go PSL final, the guy tells David Visa to sit the fuck down. I'm coming out to bat, and he goes at it, blitz like what did he make
damn
50 in
near, I
that game?
think.
Damn near, and he essentially wins the game for them with the
And he
bat
has like
and
a
ball. Like this is the
nightmare
guy
first
who,
spell with the ball too. Kyron Pollard is chirping him in the
yeah,
media.
yeah.
He chirped him throughout that tournament, and Shaheen comes back and he gets him out. And I think he was like first two overs. I think he went for over 30, and he came back and he took four in the second two, in the death innings.
But that scene is damn near
Yeah.
like out of a movie where like Visa is getting out to bat and he's like sit the hell down. He comes running from the dressing room. I'm going out to bat. So he has that in him, and I feel like he has the personality to take big
Yes,
calls.
he's not
I think
afraid.
so. Um, he's not afraid to do that. I think all of us when Shahid Afridi became his father-in-law knew this was coming eventually. A captaincy was definitely it just would be like a matter of time before like he would be pushed as captain. I think the Lahore success just sort of
He dragged them
you
out
know
of the depths
sped that
of
up a little bit.
franchise cricket hell, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly. And at the same time though, like he's a fast bowler who's 23 years old, hasn't really had the best of time recently. Not to say that his performances aren't good enough to deserve to be captain, but maybe like a little bit too soon. I like the fact that it's only
Yeah,
T20. If it was T20 and one day, I
but
think
yeah,
it's a
it is
good
one day.
decision right now to buy yourself
It
a
is
little
one day.
bit more.
It is
It
one
is
day.
one day, probably, but at least they've bought themselves a little bit of time to
Yeah,
think
our
about
poor
that.
planning has actually
You know,
worked in some respect.
yeah. But I think I agree with you that if you had to make, obviously if Shaheen was someone you identified as to be captain in the long run, with Rizwan being like what 31, 32,
Around that
or
30, 31. Yeah.
maybe, yeah, around that age, he would have been probably the ideal guy to make captain. But again, I don't think he has that. Like, no one is clamoring in the media for Rizwan to be captain. It's more like a logical choice, right? And unfortunately,
या
Pakistan
लेकिन
में ये
जैसे
सब
तुमने
चलता
बोला
ही
ना कि because I thought I was stupid. I'm like, कोई इस बंदे का नाम ही नहीं ले रहा है. But then you pointed out कि the PCB had trouble with this guy too because he was standing up for his beliefs.
Yeah, so this is something I wanted to talk about. We've seen it come up recently in the national T20.
Shout out Azam
Azam
Khan.
Khan had
Shout out
a
Azam Khan.
Yeah, he had a Palestine flag on his bat, and he got fined his match fees. I think it was for displaying that symbol. Like, again, ineptitude, disgusting from the PCB. Again, we're seeing what's happening in the world, and these guys have a right to express their opinion about that. I think they've bowed to pressure and they've reversed that fine now. But just going back to the reason we brought this up, Rizwan posted about Palestine during the World Cup, and apparently there was a lot of backlash that he faced from the PCB administration about doing so. If you notice, Babar only actually posted about that after he got removed as captain, or like after he resigned as captain, however you see it. So I do feel like this sort of political thinking, goes into the PCB. I feel like they feel like maybe they might not be able to control the narrative as much if Rizwan would be
Yeah.
captain, and I'm sure that plays a part in it, especially what we've
What else
discussed
could it be?
at the
Because if you
start,
look at
given
it, like
the thinking
he's
that
had
these
the
people
most
have.
Faraz
Yeah,
Ahmad like rise to what would have been him getting this position with like uh, KPK cricket and all of these various things. So I think that's the only reason you could not even mention his name. But yeah,
Hmm.
just moving past that, I think with Shaheen Afridi, see, I don't know what type of tactician he is. That's yet to be seen. But what I really like about him is that for better or worse, I would always rather have a captain who wants to move the game forward than who wants to sit back and see what's
Yeah,
going on. And with him, he's gonna have to tone it down at times. Some of that ultra aggression. But I love the fact that he's always thinking about a wicket. He's always thinking about how to get somebody out, right? And I think that can bode really well for him. And I think especially for a young guy like him, look, man, Babar and Rizwan are gonna be there with him, and I think they're gonna offer him a lot of good advice. So I think he has good
yeah.
guys around him. I don't think it's like a lot of these other guys we've seen in our cricketing history where the guys don't want them to succeed. I don't think it's something like that.
I would just hope that he uses them being,
Yeah,
or their
yeah, and I think
experience
he will
rather
because you
than
see it with
becoming
David
a.
Wisa and Mohammad Hafeez and these
Yeah,
types of guys who's played with at Lahore. And then he has that again, like I said, he has that aggression, and I love the fact that he was. I'd rather have you lose picking a fight than avoiding one, right? So
yeah,
Shaheen's always someone
that's
who's
true.
gonna go pick a fight. So I like it. I'm really happy they didn't make him test captain. Just bro, honestly, I want to cancel the Australia tour because bro, तुम इस बंदे को तोड़ दोगे. I don't even want him to play in the test matches there because you see what's happened with his pace, and the guy is a detriment to himself. He's never ever gonna say rest me like that much. We know already. Yeah,
Bro, bro, bro. He cannot even say that now because apparently, if you say कि arrest me, it's like
bro,
a cardinal
crazy,
sin
crazy,
आजकल. For a guy who's not even played Test cricket, and
crazy,
Haris Rauf, उसने
crazy,
एक Test match खेला है. He's barely played any first class matches. He should not
shameful.
even be in
Shameful.
consideration. Like, these guys are always
I like
channeling
Wahab
pressure.
Riaz. I like him honestly, and
Yeah,
a lot of I understand what he's saying. Let's prefer people who play want to play for Pakistan, play red ball cricket. But
yeah.
bro, Muhammad Amir retired the same time as you, Mr. Wahab Riaz, and he was talking about how Test workload was the reason that he wanted to retire from Test.
Wahab Riaz pulled out of the last Australia tour and forced us to take a 16-year-old Naseem Shah and Shaheen
And Musa
Afridi as
Khan,
the, and
and Musa
19-year-old
Khan,
Shaheen Afridi and
Musa Khan.
18-year-old Musa Khan as
Yes.
the three
So
guys. and they bichara got like
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
destroyed.
Please,
So like
please.
I think it's
Yeah,
pretty rich for you
yeah,
to come out and call out Haris
yeah,
Rauf
bro.
for doing that. And apparently now they're taking revenge on him by not giving
Come
him an
on,
NOC
man.
for
Come
the
on.
Big Bash
No,
League.
see, my here's my
It's
problem.
just
I don't mind you if you like usko gali wali de do tum private mein, but to come out, I'll tell you why I have a problem with this. Number one, he got medical clearance. You know who else got medical clearance to play for Pakistan? Naseem Shah did.
hmm,
उस बेचारे के साथ क्या किया तुम लोगों ने? Number one, right? Number two, if a guy is saying, I don't think my body can hold up, your thought should be that ये बंदा तो टेप बॉल क्रिकेट से अभी उसको एक आधा डेकेड भी नहीं हुआ होगा, max 5 6 years. Push
yeah.
him towards first class cricket. Say, I'm not going to give you an NOC to play the Big Bash if there's domestic first class cricket going on. Fair enough. But for you to say that a guy who's played one test match got injured in 13 overs and then got injured in 13 overs, to say him not going to Australia is going to be the cause of you losing is shambolic. Side note, another coach of Haris Rauf, Mr. Akib Javed, who wants to take all the credit in the world when these guys are doing anything. But as soon as these guys don't perform, he takes his hands off, say, oh, I didn't prepare them for test. I didn't prepare them for one day. So there's just nobody wants to be blamed. Everybody thinks they're right all the time. And there's just a lot of scumbag behavior going on, honestly. And then, sorry, just to go back, it's been a long tangent, but the second point is what happens the next time a young guy feels a little bit of a niggle? Is he going to be comfortable telling you that he wants to miss a test tour? Or is he going to not be able to and ruin his career like you've done with so many bowlers already? So to publicly criticize him on that, honestly, I don't even mind the NOC thing. If they're saying that Haris Trophy won rest, then you can go to Big Bash, whatever, fine. I'm still okay with that. But for you to publicly call him out and now set a precedent of people not feeling safe, um, to talk about load management and this type of stuff from a fast bowler himself, yeah, I didn't really mess with that.
Yeah. So I guess we've shared thoughts on Shaheen. Hopefully it goes well. We're excited. I'm excited to see like T20 World Cup's just around the corner, so he's the guy who
Yeah.
will be tested immediately in that
Test
capacity.
captain, I just want to tell so I gotta give you props, sir. I don't know
Yeah,
तुमने किसको पैसे दिए या तुम्हारा कौन दोस्त है पीसीबी में, but half an hour before they announced the test captain, the last person on anyone's mind was somehow the first man on this man's mind, which is Shan Masood. First of all, tell me, how the hell did you know that, bro?
I did not know that. I was thinking, okay, मेरी thinking ये थी, bro. I was like, Australia में वैसे ही लगने वाले हैं. So let's just write that tour off. Make Shan Masood the temporary captain
You
on
ever
the
heard of
Australia
temporary
tour, and let's
captain?
just move past that. Exactly. But so I was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Obviously, they chose Shan Masood, but not as a temporary captain. Like they've given him, and to be fair, like let's be honest, if you're gonna make him captain, like give him the rest of the World Test Championship
Yeah, let him
cycle to
stay
be
for
able
2 or 3 years
actually
now.
implement his ideas. So at
Leave
least
him
that is
alone. Leave him
something
alone.
smart that they've done. Obviously, there are some concerns for aspects of his or him being named captain. Which, firstly, I think you brought this up when we were discussing this off air as well. उसकी जगह शायद टीम में परमानेंट है नहीं अभी, which is I guess the biggest thing you could say. Generally, as a guy, I think like everyone's seen over the course of the last few years the way this guy's reinvented himself in white ball cricket, but also like the initiative he takes to improve himself. Plus the bro, just because he speaks English doesn't mean he's smart. It's just based on like the
No,
interviews
but
that
Hubs,
you
the
see of the
problem is
guy
that
and the fact that he's
the
team
people in
captain.
power, that's why they think he's smart, right? वो हो
Yeah,
सकता
this
है,
is
but
true. Yeah.
they put him in because he speaks English. That's a large part of it, I'm sure, bro.
I think, but if you look at it objectively, he's clearly identified that the way he was playing cricket was not good enough, for to get into the Pakistan team and to be like a modern day player. So he has worked on it and he's developed his game, and that's something that is more than you can say for a lot of people within our cricketing
Yeah.
history, right? That's one point. The second point is the guy's gone and performed in county cricket. He was the captain of Yorkshire. So that's something he has captaincy experience and he's done
Derbyshire का
pretty
भी
well with
शायद है
it
ना?
recently. I think Derbyshire का
अच्छा
शायद
ओके
पहले था, now
या
Yorkshire में है. Yeah, I'm not sure if he was just a player in Derbyshire. But yeah, so it's not like he doesn't have any pedigree to be named captain or like a leg to stand on. He does. What are your
yeah, and
thoughts?
it's a bit weird because when I was arguing for Rizwan to become Test captain, my one big thing was Sarfraz maybe has that spot over him in Test right now, तो उसको बना सकते. But I was
He shouldn't play in Australia, in
Oh,
my
for sure, for
opinion,
sure.
but
I
he
think we
probably
both
will.
agreed that in Senna conditions as a batter and as a keeper, we prefer Rizwan. But Sarfraz maybe has that position right now. So that was the only doubt for me on Rizwan becoming captain. So then
Yeah.
to see Shan Masood, who before this last test series in Sri Lanka, where he played really well and positively, by the way, people are calling him Parchi or किधर से आया और किसी और को खिलाओ.
Yes, he didn't score in those games, but the way the intent he showed was exactly
Yes,
on par with the
for
brand of
sure, for
cricket we
sure.
wanted to play, right? So at least he's able to embody that, and that's something that I give him credit for, and I think that he'll actually be able to continue that line of thinking. Because it looks like in the last tour we've established that this is the way we want to play Test cricket. A modicum of continuity is important, and I feel like he will at least bring
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I'm not doubting that.
And
I'm just saying that that was a two match series, right? Well, that basically means that two test matches before, um, इसकी शायद टीम में जगह, you know,
yeah,
how do you consensus तौर
no,
पे
that
नहीं
is
था ना, और
unquestionable.
अभी भी शायद नहीं है.
Yeah,
So that's my only thing with him, and a little bit of sour taste of them trying to make him one day captain in between two, in the last like my thing is I think इनकी
yeah,
नीयत खराब है PCB की. Like I don't mind him being captain if you
yeah.
get over him maybe not having a cemented jaga in the team. Well, the poor guy hasn't really ever been giving a long rope, and maybe this is what will finally give him that long rope. I think he's a good enough player to be in the team, and I think he could be a good captain. I think he's a good thinker of the game. You hear him on Cricket Info doing analysis. For me, is just a little bit of the um. Did the PCB put this in because they think he's some kind of a yes man? Do they like him because he's that like well imaged guy of a guy who can speak English, educated
Yeah,
dude, says the
I'm
right
sure.
things, isn't too doesn't have too much. Yeah, he doesn't
Controversial.
really want to stand out, I should say, right? Like, so I don't know what the intention behind making him captain is, but it makes sense from some cricketing reasons too. We talk about that clash isn't there. He obviously probably doesn't in the limited overs teams right now. And he's worked hard to get to this point. I think he can do a good job. I don't know how it happened. I think it was just more that shock factor than anything else. Yeah,
Yeah, and honestly, I don't like. Obviously, spoke about like what the benefits are, I guess, of him being captain, or why he might be like in that might have been in that conversation. But having said that, like I think what you said about his Jaga not being Paki in the team, I think वो सबसे like काफी भारी point है. और उसके अलावा, like if you look at his Test career as a whole, it's pretty ordinary. So again, like in terms of performance basis, he doesn't deserve to be Pakistan captain. But again, I think beyond Babar and Rizwan, if you go to the Test 11 fully, yes, like he wasn't on anyone's mind. But if you actually like assess that, okay, if Babar and Rizwan aren't going to be named captain for some reason or the other, I guess it makes sense to have this guy be the captain because, like we said, we have a void at number three since Azhar Ali's gone. And I don't really know if there's a player in the domestic system right now who's able to fill that fully.
I think you
So
eventually
yeah, I
move
guess,
Abdullah
and I
Shafiq to
don't.
number three, right? Um,
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah. So I think, and we want to keep
yeah,
Babar at four as well. So I guess in that sense, uski jagah banti hai. But yeah, I want to see how it goes because Australia tour pe, let's be honest, is going to be like a baptism of fire for him. It's things are not going to
yeah,
go well, and how are people going to react after that? What if the administration changes after
yeah.
the like
Just don't
early
Azhar
next year?
Ali the
Will there
guy.
be another
Like Azhar
captain?
Ali got removed at the right time, but you did the guy dirty, bro. Like the way he probably shouldn't have been captain in the first place. And then to take the
First place,
captaincy
yeah.
away, um, like that. Give it to the right guy for sure, but you don't want to see somebody done dirty like that either. So hopefully they give him a run, and hopefully he does good.
Yeah.
Um, there's
At the end of the day, like we want to see these
Yeah,
guys
for
do well.
sure.
Like beyond like whatever reason they've been made
We're not
captain, if
against
Pakistan ke
nobody.
captain
We're
hai hum,
just like we're like, where the hell did this come from, right? Like it didn't really
Yeah.
make too much sense at the time. And I don't know, I don't really understand it systematically either. In the sense that, again, I'm gonna say it again, Shan Masood can end up being a really good captain, but वो तो सिंध की कप्तानी भी नहीं करता है ना, first class में. So if this
Mm.
guy really was like one of the guys who you earmarked as a captain, that message should go.
It wasn't earmarked, yeah.
That's what I'm
They're not even
saying.
pretending
Yeah.
it was earmarked. It was just like off the
No,
cuff
but they've been
decision,
trying to
right?
make
Let's be
this guy
honest.
captain in one day for like a year and a half, bro. Like I don't know.
But I don't know who that was. It was all rumors, wo
Yeah,
chalte rehte hain
उसको वाइस
rumors,
कप्तान अचानक
you
बना
know.
दिया न्यूजीलैंड
And
सीरीज
to
का.
be fair, like they apparently wanted to keep Babar as test captain, right?
Babar
So
did the right
maybe
thing though,
they,
bro. Like for Babar's point of view,
yeah,
I
I think
think
for
he
his,
can just bat and not have to. He doesn't deserve this
agreed.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Imad Wasim.
Oh, you
Yeah,
want to talk
I
about
want to
that?
talk about
Okay,
that
sure.
because um, let's look at the contracts first of all. The PCB has now apparently issued into its contract that a player will be given no more than one NOC actually, one domestic league being the PSL, and then you can play one more. Imad Wasim pulled out of the T20 tournament in Pakistan to go play T10. Mohammad Hafeez called him a day or two before that, asking for his availability. This is a guy who was in the team, despite all of his, whatever back and forth with Babar. Not back and forth, him talking against Babar. He was in the T20 team. Um, you can understand it from a financial point of view, this, that. I don't want to make this too personal, but a part of me is like, there was a World Cup in 6 months. You couldn't have retired after that. So,
A World Cup in 6 months in a country where you've
yes,
recently performed
yes.
really well, and you probably
Yeah,
would have had a
you
place in the
definitely, the
side
way Nawaz
guaranteed.
is going.
Given Nawaz's
Yes,
performances in the World Cup, like I
that's what.
think it's
Unless you
pretty
needed the
odds
cash
on
that
that
quick for
Imad Wasim
whatever
is gonna.
reason, you could have done the exact same. You could have retired right after that. You could have gone the Trent Bolt route of foregoing your central contract, making yourself available for
Well,
selection
I
in these
don't. I don't
tournaments,
think
but then
these guys.
going. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think these guys think too much. Like I know it's their lives and their careers, but it just seems like they make off the cuff decisions based on like what the
Yeah,
sentiment is at the time. He went on ARY during the World Cup and he chatted a lot of
yeah.
shit. So he's getting backlash from all sides now, and now he's like, okay, fine, like
That's
I'm
why
not
I
even
brought
gonna
this
play.
up.
I think that is what played his part in this. I don't think it's
It's
really a
an ego.
cricketing
It seems
decision.
like an ego thing.
I think
But this
it's
is why
more
I'm
like
bringing
an
this
ego
up
sort of
because
move.
there was a lot of मोहम्मद आमिर अगर इमाद कप्तान बन जाए मैं वापस चलो ब्रो हर चीज तुम्हारे ऊपर ही चलाएंगे. First of all तुम तो साइड पे
Yeah.
हो. Second of all, if you asked me 4 weeks ago what's more likely, for Imad Wasim to become the T20 captain or for Shan Masood to become the Test captain, I would have said Imad Wasim becoming the T20 captain is a more viable, likely thing to happen. If that man got made T20 captain, do you think he would have retired? I sure as hell don't think he would have retired,
Of
bro.
course.
I really don't
Of
think
course
he would
he
have
wouldn't.
retired.
No, no shit he wouldn't have. Yeah, come
Do
on.
you think? For me, I feel like in his heart he was like, "Yeah, शायद मुझे कप्तान बना ही दे, मैं अभी खेलूंगा." And then नहीं बनाया तो उसने.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't really understand the decision to retire. Like, I can get it, but like, if you want to play leagues and stuff, but sure, that can happen within like the T20 World Cup 6 months
Yeah,
away. Like, just play that World Cup. You actually have a good chance of getting to the Pakistan team. The team could benefit
we
from your
needed
services,
that skill
not
set
just from
too,
his
right?
perspective.
Like
Like,
उसकी जगह बनती भी
yeah,
थी
we needed
और
them, right? I was very disappointed to see that. Yeah,
no,
so
for me
I don't
it's like,
know.
why are
That's
you
his
ducking
decision.
smoke, bro? Like you want to be in every team. The World Cup is in 6 months. You play in these conditions. You're supposed to be God's gift to cricket, apparently, and you're ducking out when we actually need your skill set. Everything you wanted to do, you could have done
Mhm.
after. You respect people's decisions financially. I don't know what people's financial conditions and stuff are, but it just seems like the easy way out in some sense to talk mad greasy about everyone on TV with Muhammad Amir, and then you're in the team, my guy. Like, is it
It
an
does.
ego thing? You don't want to play under somebody else? Like, you're not Imran Khan, brother. I'm sorry. Like, it's just that's not who you are. So if you were sitting there expecting the kaptani and that's what was gonna keep you there, like, ठीक है, bro. Like, fine. If I'd rather just have this toxic energy out. If that's what it is, then it is what it is. Like on your way, it is what. Like, what else could you do on your
On your
bicycle, mate,
bicycle,
bro?
mate, as he
Very
says.
disappointing.
Moving away from Imad Wasim, obviously. Wahab को chief selector बनाया, we touched on it. Hafiz को director of
That's
cricket
coach.
बना दिया है.
नहीं, पहले पहले उस पे बात
With
करो, पहले
Wahab,
उस पे
I
बात
don't.
करो. You had some things about the
It's fair.
Hafiz coaching appointment that you weren't too happy.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of talk always in Pakistan कि foreign coach होना चाहिए या domestic coach होना चाहिए, like मतलब Pakistani coach होना चाहिए या foreign. There's pros and cons to both. Foreign coaches bring a degree of professionalism and coaching experience that
And
unfortunately we
no
don't have
baggage.
within Pakistan because we haven't developed those sort of coaches and given them the opportunities. And of course, what Arman spoke about with baggage, I like the idea of a Pakistani coach if it's not someone who's played cricket for Pakistan, especially recently, because I think a lot of these guys come in with a lot of ego. They make it about them rather than it be about the team, and that is my concern with Hafiz as well. It was similar when Misbah came in, although Misbah is the guy who I would respect a lot more in terms of and rate a lot more in terms of his ability to deliver in that sort of role. But I think both of us were very disappointed by ultimately the way he handled his coaching tenure as well. I think, like for example, someone like Abdur Rahman, who was in the coaching staff under Mickey Arthur, he's been a massive part of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's success in the domestic circuit. A lot of people talk about him as being a really good coach with a good head on his shoulders, a good thinking brain, playing progressive cricket. It would have brought some level of continuity, and he's earned the right by having coached teams successfully within the domestic circuit. Unless you have a big name or you're a Gora, you don't get the
And we've
respect you
seen what's
deserve.
happened with the
And
big
so
names.
he's
The only big name not to go on an ego trip was Saqlain Mushtaq.
yeah. So I was going to say yeah, Abdul Rahman को तो अब बिल्कुल ही हटा दिया coaching staff से भी, and Saklan was my other point. Like he was the one guy who didn't really have that sort of ego that he brought into the role. It was like he really came in with the mindset that I'm going to do what I can to help these guys, and I think he created a really good culture on the team. Like we spoke about Babar creating that unity. I'm sure like Saklan had a big part in
We
that as
originally
well,
saw
right?
Saqlain
Like
as the coach
of
that
course,
empowered Babar to be a leader, right? Which Misbah didn't
yeah,
really do the same way.
exactly. Yep, exactly. So for me, like Pakistan coach should be someone who, at the end of the day, has earned the right for that job by proving himself in domestic cricket, whether it be Pakistan or abroad, and actually have
Yeah.
coaching badges and experience. Hafiz does not have coaching badges. Now, today I'm hearing his press conference where he's sort of describing himself as a director of cricket, where he sets the strategy for the team, but then there's individual coaches. Like I don't know why they try to be cool and sort of implement these roles without actually understanding what they mean. Like Rob Key's director for cricket in England,
He's
like
not in the
he's
dressing
not
room,
like
the
he sets the culture from like taking a step
brand
back,
point of
looking
view
at
and
uh,
brand of cricket point of view. Like,
no, just like in terms of like looking at what we can do with the domestic setup, what we can do with the current team, like
yeah,
what our
grassroots
approach
पे
is
तो
going to
किसी ने
be.
काम ही नहीं करना है ना, because there's no shine there.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. They all, and Hafiz is a guy who was on TV recently during the World Cup chatting a lot of shit, man. But here he has no coaching badges or experience, and yet he's going to accept the job. Like, where's your integrity there? And look, he spoke a good game in the press conference today. I actually liked some of the things he had to say, but I still have to say these things because it's
yeah,
true, right? Like, किस merit पे तुम्हें ये job मिली है?
yeah.
किस like what have you done to deserve it? And look, he could be a massive success. Obviously, ये सब चलता रहता है, but again, I don't know.
I
I
agree
don't
with you,
love the
bro.
idea here.
With him as a coach, like Pakistan needs to decide what they want from a coach. For me, a coach is somebody who's been through the levels of coaches, earned the spot, and someone who could actually work with players in the off season and fix their technique because they have the acumen for
Bro,
that particular skill. With Hafiz, Junaid Khan has coached a lot. He's coached junior levels. He's coaching a domestic system now. Um, Hafiz is acting as a coach right now. He hasn't ever coached anyone before. And for me, again, like I prefer it not to
one,
be a big name, but even if it is, उस बंदे को coach तो होना चाहिए.
one thing we can learn from is the example of Rahul Dravid with India. He coached the
Yeah.
under 19 team for a number of years. He didn't have the ego, okay, I've been a former India captain or a great player. I'll still go ahead and coach the under 19s and earn that right to become India coach. Yunus Khan was offered the under 19 job, but he didn't accept the amount that he was being paid
किसी ने
or
उसकी
whatever. Like
disrespect कर दी होगी.
he could have developed himself. ये तो हमारे इतने egos होते हैं कि we don't want to start from the bottom. Like we don't actually want to work your way up as you do in any job. So how are you going to be successful? Firstly, like let's put everything to the side. Let's talk about you as an individual being successful in the role. Hafiz has been made director of cricket. We want him to succeed because he's in that role. Would it not be better for him to have at least gone through the ropes and had that experience so that he can actually have something to fall back on when
Yeah,
things go wrong? So that he can actually lean on that experience. No, so that something like that would have been very helpful for him to succeed eventually
yeah.
in his career. And eventually, now in 6 months' time, if it doesn't work, he's going to be gone. And then where do you go from there? Because you've already been at the top, right?
Do you think
Where do
maybe
you
we're
progress your
getting
career?
lost a little bit in what the actual role is? Because I guess he's an interim coach slash cricketing director. That could we say if you're deciding things administratively, like in coach, he might only be for this
वो
one tour,
पहले तो
na?
वो उन्होंने ये बताया तो नहीं है ना पहले उन्होंने
Mm.
अनाउंस किया he's they're combining the director of cricket and head coach role and Hafiz is going to be the guy but now today Hafiz is saying that I'm the director of cricket and I just set strategy and we have individual coaches on
So
the
it's
ground
like
who are
a
actually coaching the
football
players so
manager
what
type of
is
thing, then, right?
yeah but like then we हम कहाँ से ये set कर रहे हैं like ये
Yeah,
कहाँ
I
से we're just
don't.
picking up ideas from here and there
I
not
don't
actually
know.
looking at how
Yeah.
they're going to work or whatever I don't know it just seems like
The poor
everything is a
guys who have
recipe
actually been
for
putting in
disaster right
work,
now.
like with under 19 cricketers and in first class, they never get any like the Jaz Ahmeds of the world. Like these type, if we have an Abdur
Yeah,
Rahman type of guy, finally, thank God, someone like Muhammad Yusuf has decided to go down to the grassroots and try to make a
yeah.
difference there, which is what you
Right.
ultimate. That's where you need your best coaches
That's
as
good
well.
to see.
Um,
And I think this is all summed up in the fact that Australia tour के लिए 18 players की team announce हुई है और team management includes 17
yeah,
people. Almost as many management people as their players. So like there's
yeah.
just people going around for joyrides essentially to make money out of this. It's a joke to them or
I think
हमारी
Hafiz is a
cricket
sincere
ऐसे
guy, though.
कैसे
I'll say that. Like, I think he will do his job. Wahab,
बहुत
I was
yeah.
pissed with his press conference, but I like Wahab. I don't. I've usually been a Wahab fan. So,
Yeah, chief selector, I feel like
yeah.
anyone can be. You don't necessarily have to be. I actually like the idea that
Yes,
it's
because
like a
he's
younger
when
guy
players के
compared
साथ
to
वाकिफ
like
है ना, whoever's in the domestic system, he's actually seen them up close and personal.
yeah,
So
exactly. Rather than some like old Baba who
yeah,
doesn't know anything and doesn't have the ability to like recognize what the needs of and demands of
yeah.
modern cricket are. So at least that's something. Let's see. Like at least these guys have been in and around, so they know like during their careers like what went wrong, and that hopefully they can learn from that.
एक चीज पे बात
Again,
नहीं
I
हुई
don't know. I'm quite right now.
कि वो
किस चीज़ पे?
like how in Lagan when they lose to the villagers तो वो सर क्या नाम था रसल या कुछ वो बोलते हैं बेटा तू है आर्मी में लेकिन तू अफ्रीका जा कहीं और जाना है तुम्हें they did the same thing with Mickey Arthur and all these guys कि बेटा तू कोच है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में लेकिन तू जाके
Yeah,
डोमेस्टिक क्रिकेट में तू जाके उधर काम
true,
करो
true.
they just
It's just basically forcing them
yeah
to resign
trying to get
because
them
they
out
don't
of
have
that
the power
horrible
to sack
contract that we
someone.
shouldn't have given them in the first place. Another thing, bro, like, bro, these players have been through so many coaches in the last few years. They went from like who was the batting coach in the T20 World Cup? I don't remember the first one, but then it became Mohammad Yusuf.
Vedas,
Heroes was there's like a batting mentor. Who was the batting coach now? They had like different guys that had coach in
अभी नया अनाउंस हुआ है होलियो
मैं
एडम
तो
होलियो
इंडोर की
या
बात
कोई
कर रहा हूँ ब्रो जो कि कोई और ही था like there was Andy
हाँ कुछ
Paddick and
पटेक
then they
एंड्रू
had Grant
पटेक एंड
Bradburn
समथिंग
in the last few years from bowling coach they went from Vakar Yunus to Verlin Philander to Sean Tate to Morny Morkel to Umar Gul. What the hell, bro?
yeah.
Like,
And again, Umar Goel, another guy who was on TV during the World Cup saying that Shadab was because he went off with a concussion, like he should have been playing, and like
he came on
what
TV to show
that's not
that
showing the
yeah
right
बकवास कर
attitude.
रहा था.
Like
Yeah,
वो अगर अगर ये तुम लोगों की सोच है तो
yeah.
फिर तुम कैसे like
Him at
successful
least
हो गए
he's
यार कि a
yeah,
guy's had a
yeah,
concussion but he
yeah,
should be playing
yeah.
on the
At
field.
least
Like
he's
come on.
coached, so I won't he's
Yeah.
still put in some effort into that profession in itself. But what you said about Shada was like, bro, like you've been a player. Like why would you say something like that about someone who's playing, bro?
This is what I don't understand the most about these guys. Like they're in and around the game. They know what goes on, what the players deal with, and yet they're the first people once they retire. Instead of being like, okay, like this was what happened to me. This is something to learn from, and actually like not put the next generation through, right? But unfortunately, these guys are not like that. They're like, हमारे साथ तो आता तो हम भी करेंगे, and it just shows like small-minded sort of nature. But on that note, on that note, we'll call it. That was another episode of Not That Important. Thank you to everyone who's listening. And if you are a regular listener and you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. It just gives us the affirmation that there's actually people who want to listen to what we have to say, and gives us the motivation to continue to, produce episodes and talk about the team and sport that we love. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.